When I'm in different cities and places, I often ask myself the question, what can these places tell me about the past? What secrets are there waiting to be discovered? Especially secrets about the impact of events upon people. Well, this is Darwin. It's the capital city of the Northern Territory, and it's a very important defence outpost for Australia. Troops leave here for overseas each year. But I've also found out that there are some secrets in Darwin that tell us about one of the greatest tragedies ever to occur on Australian soil.
And I looked up and I saw this first wave of 7 coming in, and I thought, oh, yeah, good, we've got some planes at last, thinking they were our own planes. And not long after that, we heard an always like express train. I saw the bombs coming in. Wasn't scared or nothing. I was too busy to be scared, because everything I saw, I just saw it. All this time, the planes were just circling around and coming at us from all angles. I think about 11 ships went down that I saw, just all around the harbour. People were everywhere in the water, screaming.
On the 19th of February 1942, attacks by Japanese planes left much of this city in ruins. Some historians have even described this as the greatest military disaster on Australian territory in a single day. This is the Legislative Assembly, and it's the home of government in the Northern Territory, and it's an absolutely beautiful building. And as I walk into this little foyer, I notice this old brick wall, and I'm wondering what it is. Well, in fact, I have done some research and found out that it's all that remains of the original post office, which was pretty much on this exact site. Now, it's an old brick wall, but it's got a sad story to tell. Now, out on the foyer, there's a lovely little gold plaque, which commemorates where that bomb fell, and it killed 10 postal workers, 10 civilians, 19th of February 1942. More than 60 years later, the scars of that day and the days that followed are still here. But I wonder how many of the thousands of tourists who visit the top end each year really understand what happened all those years ago. And for that matter, how many Australians really know that in 1942 and 1943 there were 64 separate Japanese air raids on this city. And if we don't know that, why don't we? This is a 9.2-inch replica gun. It's a model of those guns that were commissioned in 1944 and 1945 to defend the shipping lanes. It was part of a fortress defence policy. Now, you don't have to be a genius to ask the question, well, wasn't that a bit too late? Part of the mystery we're trying to solve is, was the government at the time prepared for this invasion? In 1942, the Prime Minister of the day, John Curtin, called all Australians to arms, and the governments produced films reassuring the people that Australia was ready for anything that the Japanese could throw at them. But the government lied. In the days following the bombing of Darwin, the Air Minister reported that casualties totalled 17 killed and 24 wounded. We now know that during the air raids there were officially 243 people killed and 400 wounded. But estimates are greater. Some people think that there were more Indigenous people and refugees killed as well. But at the time, people in other parts of Australia had no idea of the extent of the devastation that occurred on February 19, 1942. But why? Why did the government lie to the people? And was that lie justified in the circumstances? This is a mystery that we want you to explore. And you'll also uncover stories of the human impact of war. Stories about people like able seaman Edward Sheehan, who strapped himself to his gun and kept firing at the Japanese even as his ship sank. And the sailors of the USS Peary, who all died defending the town. Now, from his vantage point at Stokes Hill, Fred Womby, who won a military medal for bravery on that day, described the events as they occurred.
I think the SS Peary was one of the saddest sights I ever saw. That was bombed and ablaze, and the chaps there were still firing the anti-aircraft gun as it was going down the back. People were everywhere in the water, screaming.
But not all people were heroic. There are stories of troops looting and running away, and of civilians who ran for their lives, trying to escape the danger of the bombings. Many of these people regrouped here at Adelaide River, whilst others, so the story goes, fled straight for Melbourne. The clues to many of the sad mysteries and sad stories can be found here at the Adelaide River War Cemetery, where you'll find the gravestones of people like Daisy Martin, an Aboriginal maid who died at Government House. Alongside Daisy, you'll find graves with the names Polymopamine, Lizzie, R. Young. But what's particularly sad is this memorial here dedicated to the postal workers, all of whom were killed in the raid on Darwin. And there are 3 names here belonging to the one family: the postmaster, Hurtle Bald, his wife, Alice Bald, and their daughter, Iris. Fortunately, son Peter was in South Australia at the time of the raids. But you'll need to go beyond the headstones and the memorials to find out about the people, to discover what happened to them, to find the mysteries, the clues, and some of the answers. This is a particularly sad memorial because it honours those who died in war and have no known grave. And there's one name on this memorial which is a very sad story of loss. The name belongs to Sister de Mestre. She was a nurse on board the ship Manunda when the Japanese attacked Darwin Harbour. Margaret was injured, her fiancé took her to shore, and then he returned to help the crew. When he went back to find her body, she'd gone. She'd disappeared. No one knows what happened to her, and the events of that day have haunted him right throughout his life. Here at the East Point Military Museum is a great place to begin our journey of discovery, to try and solve our mystery. And we can get a sense here of the sequence of events that resulted in the bombing of Darwin. Now, this is a navigation map, a chart, a navigation chart that was given to every pilot who flew to Darwin on those days and afterwards. Now, it's very detailed, of course, as you can see. Here's Northern Australia. They would have come down through here, Timor, Papua New Guinea, etc. And it begs the question, how did they get this detailed information about our coastline? Well, there's another irony here. Before the war, the Australian government employed Japanese topographers to chart our northern coastline areas. Why? Because they had special knowledge of the Pacific region. I think you'll find this a very challenging history mystery because it's all about how Australians responded to the threat of war on their own soil. And it's also about what the government chose to tell us or not tell us and why. You might also like to consider how we can get more Australians to learn about what really happened in Darwin in 1942 and 1943. And perhaps there are ways that we can commemorate this very important historical event in the battle for Australia.